So let me. So welcome everybody. I am absolutely delighted to be able to host this conversation. I definitely do not want to be the only speaker, but I'm going to host a conversation where we're going to reflect together about this amazing experience that I've just had recently. I'm going to talk you through why I've done what I've done, why did I go, the whole thing. And I'm going to do my best to give you a sense of what happened in Vancouver. But I want to start, one of the key ideas, so the theme of TED 2023 was possibility. As you know, that's a term that I can't stay away from. And AI was a very big theme. So I made a commitment after session 1 that session 2, that I'm going to stop being such a AI phobe, and I'm going to actually get interested. And I'm seeing Paul Steenkamp's post. Paul Steenkamp's been trying to get me interested, and I've been dragging my feet. So anyway, I've decided that I'm going to become a competent. If you've watched that talk that Greg did, I mean, it was, Paul, did you watch it? Have you watched it yet? Okay, so it was amazing. That first talk, that was the first message that went out. But anyway, once you've watched that and you go, how can we not all that? I'll give you an example. He says to ChatGPT, he says, please give me a menu for a post-TED celebratory meal. So the AI comes up with a suggested menu. He says, that looks interesting. Can you show me what that would look like? So we see a picture of this meal and what it will look like on the table. He goes, no, that looks exactly like what I want. Have we catered for the vegetarian and the vegan and the whatever? And he comes back and says, yeah, we've got all these options. He says, please, can you just get me a shopping list? So he makes the shopping list. He says, and then the AI says, do you want me to just order the goods now? So anyways, I've decided I'm going to become a competent ChatGPT user. Paul Steenkamp's going to write his next book in collaboration with ChatGPT. I may copy you. I think there's something in that. So for this talk, I thought, let me ask ChatGPT for some guidance. So I said, I will be doing a talk. This is my request to ChatGPT. I will be doing a talk about the value derived from attending TED in Vancouver this week. Please help me with an inspirational opening for my talk. I said to this flippin' AI thing. He says, certainly, here is an opening for your talk. Now, here's what ChatGPT said. Imagine being in a room filled with brilliant minds and revolutionary ideas that can change the world as we know it. Imagine being surrounded by individuals who have not only dared to dream, but have made their dreams a reality. That is the essence of TED. Attending TED is not just about listening to talks, it's also being in the presence of greatness, being inspired by the impossible, and being part of a community that believes in the power of ideas to transform our world. Today, I want to share with you the value I have derived from attending TED and how it has changed my life forever. Now, that's a good start. You know, I kind of can do with not having to think up those words and having the words delivered to my... Such a... Gillian said, wondered why they all sound the same. My kids had a heart attack. But Gillian, this is the thing. You change. So we were talking about why, you know, kids are going to have to be able to craft good prompts. So depending on the prompt, I then asked ChatGPT, I said, we're going rafting in the Orange River this weekend. We're going to be 16 people. And I gave him a long story. And I said, please, can you write me a poem? Dr. Seuss-like, I'm not going to read you the poem. Oh, my word. And then I changed 3 parameters in the prompt. Don't make it Dr. Seuss-like, make it whatever. And the poem sounds it's completely different. And then when you start to do the imagery, oh my word, you could easily go down that rabbit hole. So I'm Paul, you couldn't convince me. I'm convinced, completely convinced. And I'm going to be AI competent and confident and comfortable soon. And I'll talk to you in a minute around what the audience said when the question was, are we excited or are we scared? Because there's definitely, you know, both. So let me start by saying on this call now with 79 people, about half of you, I think, were on the WhatsApp group that followed the journey. And so I was really kind of worried around, how do I do this in a way that wouldn't feel like a duplication? So here's what I would suggest you do, is that if you're not on the WhatsApp group, that you send me a WhatsApp, and I will then simply add you to the WhatsApp group after this. So you can just send me, here's my number, send me a WhatsApp, I'll add you to the WhatsApp group, and then as the talks get released, I'll put the talks on the WhatsApp group. It's a broadcast group, so there's no chit chat on it, but it means that you'll have easy access to the talks as they get released, because if you wait for TED to release them, it takes quite a while. So I'll be able to give you a heads up. So if you send me a WhatsApp, I'll add you to the TED, my TED WhatsApp group, and then you'll get the information on there. So in thinking about, so I didn't ask ChatGPT to do the structure for this conversation. So Marie, can you WhatsApp it to me, please? Because I'm going to lose it when it's in the, so just WhatsApp to that number, your number, then I'll get it from there. So why did I go to TED? Now, at some point during this talk, I'm going to have to give you some idea of the costs, etc., which is, don't ever tell anybody that we shouldn't have this recorded. But why did I go? Because for all this time, I'm 57 this year, and I have always thought it will probably never happen. I'll never get a chance to go. And I always thought, if I want to go, but I want to be able to be a speaker, and then maybe I'll be able to go without having to pay a lot of money. And reality is, when that invitation came last year, and it says that the theme for 2023 is possibility, I felt I had no option. I had to go. Thought maybe there might be a chance that they'll fit me into the program, and maybe I'll be able to say something, but I was going to go anyway. And then, while I was, and some of you on the call were part of that kind of agonizing piece around, I've got the opportunity, they've given me a sponsorship or a half price ticket. Should I go? I watched during that time, and this was an agonizing thing for me. During that time, I watched a talk, and I can't remember the story, but it might have been a tweet or something, where they were talking about deathbed regrets. And I knew that if I had to die without having been to the main TED, that would be a regret on my deathbed. So I decided I had to go, because I didn't want to have that. That's just something for us to think about. I have made that a practice now. I think, what are the things that I'm going to be regretting if I had to die now? And I'm going to start to make that list. And it's not a bucket list. It's things that I can do differently that will not lead to deathbed regrets. So, and then to kind of be linked to all this, many of you on the school are on the African Leadership Group, WhatsApp group. And that was always, the idea was always for us to be together. So Thuli was going to join us. I think she's probably busy with all the stuff that's going on in Stellenbosch. But Thuli Madenzela and I had a conversation about a year ago, more than a year ago, about this possibility of bringing us all together and be in relationship and developing this annual pilgrimage around, or not pilgrimage, don't use that word, but an annual kind of coming together to be in community, to talk about Africa and what we're all doing, and and TED has done that. So there are people that I met at TED who have gone back to TED. This is their 13th, 14th TED. They've not missed a single one. They go back, it's their tribe, it's their community. They travel from all over the country. They go back to their own country, and they then in a group of people who go to TED. It's like Africa Burn. You're a burner, you're a TEDster, and so I've never ever kept anything from a big event, but this is my little medal that I received, and I'm very proud of my little medal, Suzette. I said to my husband, I throw all my cycle tour medals in the bin as quickly as I get it. This one I'm not going to put in the bin. It's like I'm feeling quite proud of this one. So we have different things. Some people get, kudos from doing the cycle tour. For me, going to TED was mind-blowing. So, and then I have to say to Daniel and other clients, where clients have given me opportunities last year, and that money has enabled me to pay. So I'm really, really grateful for every client who paid me last year, because that meant I could pay for this year. So I want to just ask that I'm going to put the whole group in front of me, which means that if anybody at any point if you unmute yourself, then I know you want to say something, and we would love to hear your voice. And please don't let me speak at you the whole time. That will be horrible. I'll have to create moments to pause. But if anybody wants to say anything at any point, just unmute yourself. So TED, as a reminder, the purpose of TED is to spread ideas that are worth spreading. And the acronym TED is for Technology, Entertainment, and Design. So the 80 speakers that spoke, probably about 30% of them spoke about technology. Maybe this year it might have been 40. There was a big part around entertainment, and then a big part around design. And I've decided, in reflecting on why was it such a mind-blowing experience, it's exactly because it is so diverse. So I don't think I would have chosen to watch 50, 60, 70 of the 80 talks if I wasn't there, because I would have honed in on the ones that are about education, or the ones that are about leadership, or the one. What it does for you when you go to a 5-day conference like this is that you get confronted and exposed to the entire diversity, the kind of this very diverse thing. And I think there's something around that diversity that I haven't been doing enough of recently. I've definitely been a bit too narrow-minded. Now, people are interested in, well, which kind of TED? So what TED has done over the years, and they have really honed, they've got this recipe so beautifully crafted, it's unbelievable. But what they've done is they've really taken this brand, and we can all learn from them. So there's the main TED that now happens in Vancouver every year. It used to be in other places, but because Vancouver is such a beautiful spot, that conference center, the whole city is just designed, it just works there. They're going to probably keep it there for the next, whatever period of time. So there's the main TED. Then there is the TED Countdown, which is another big event. So these are the big events that are run by the TED headquartered organization. TED Countdown is specifically about climate, and it was inspired by Al Gore and his movement. And it is encouraged, it's all around the climate and the earth. Even though there was a lot of that woven into the big TED, that TED is much more focused. And then there's TED Tech, which this year will be the first time that this is done. It's going to be in London, the first one, and they are looking at doing it in other parts of the world. And it's a collaboration between Culture 3, which is the organization who's going to be running it, and TED headquarters. So that's TED Tech. The next one is going to be in London in September. TED Women, that's going to be in October in Atlanta. So those are the 4 big TED events that Chris Anderson and his team are involved in. The main TED in Vancouver, TED Countdown, TED Tech, TED Women. And then there are hundreds of TEDx events. So Cape Town, I think they had a TEDx event this year, but these are events that are locally run by people in their university or their town or their city. And it's run by a local group of people who are doing it under license with very strict kind of guidelines and rules around how to do it. Those TED Talks get uploaded onto the main TED website. Well, some of them get uploaded, and then main TED decide which of those gets shared with the rest of the world. So the idea is this whole organization is designed to get ideas into the world. And then there's another format, which is called, so there's TEDx Youth, TEDx Ed, TEDx Salon, TEDx, there's different TEDx's that you can do. And when you run an event with any of those with TED at the beginning, then it means that you're part of this larger community, and you benefit from some of their learning, and potentially you might get your talks distributed around the TED thing. So let me pause there and hear whether anybody has a question or a comment or a response to what I've said so far. You're going to genuinely let me talk the whole time. We're all going to be bored. Okay, Paul, thank you.
Louise, how do they choose the speakers for Toronto?
Vancouver. It's a process by, they have a team who is going out there who looks, so they definitely look at TEDx talks. If it's a TEDx talk that get kind of traction, then that person might be asked to speak at main TED. But I mean, they go out in the world and they look for people who are doing really interesting things in design, in education, or in tech, in entertainment. So some of those people get known because they speak at a TEDx event, and then that kind of gets amplified. But then it's just they are like, it feels like they're like trawling the world for interesting ideas, and people are obviously contacting them all the time and letting them know of someone who's said something. And then, as you all know, there's an entire process built around preparing people for the talk. So you're going to stand on that red circle, you're going to be doing a word perfect talk. Now, what you don't know when you watch the talks is that people sometimes do lose their, they lose their place, or they forget where they are. And then that entire 1,800 people's job is to get them back on track. And so the piece that they lost their way gets edited out. But to be a TED speaker is the most nerve-wracking thing, because there's this expectation that you're going to be perfect and you're going to know all your words and you're going to do the whole thing. So people are petrified until the moment I can relax now. But it is very much a club of honor. If you walk around and on your name badge, so we've all got these name badges, and on an, when you've got a thing that says speaker alum, we all go, oh, I want to be one of you. So there's definitely a kind of club of people who have been alum, have spoken before. So does that answer the question, Paul? Okay, so TED is definitely about community. We think it's about the speakers, but honestly, that I believe in 70-20-10, that the speakers is 10%. They are very interested in the 20% and very interested in the 70% around how are you going to apply? How is this going to change who and how you are being? And then the 20% is what happens at TED and beyond TED and before TED, and I'll talk a little bit about all of that, which is around getting us connected. Because Chris Anneman, if he said it once, he probably said it 100 times. It is about the connections between people, the conversations that people are having, the possibility of collaboration that come out of these sessions. That's where the magic and where the value is. He knows that the value is not going to come from people watching a talk. There might be some, but the real value is the connections before people. Now, you must remember that this TED was the first time in 3 years, face-to-face. So people have really missed not being together. And so they have loved just being in the room, especially those who've been, this is their 10th to 11th, 12th. So they came home to their tribe, and it's like sitting in a campfire with their best mates. You really have that feeling the whole time that this is just a group of people who love each other, who are hanging out together. They're going to go back into their big wide world. They're going to do interesting stuff, and then they're going to come back home to be replenished and nourished next year. And that's my dream for what we want to do in South Africa. I just don't know whether the TED licensing process is going to make it possible for us, because it is so expensive to do anything other than a TEDx. If we're going to do interesting TEDx's, maybe we can figure out a way. But you can't, for example, do a TEDx Africa or South Africa or Western Cape. It has to be a town or a street or a library or a city or a university. So that would be another question for me around how do we find a way of creating gatherings that kind of bring us together across the country. That's a question I have. I don't know. Okay, so TED is about community. So what have they done to make community possible? Well, firstly, there's this wonderful thing, and I have never ever paid attention to these conference app, you know, the conference app that they send you, and then there's a list of people that you can connect with. And I've always been irritated with them because it just takes effort, because you need to load your details and then nothing ever happens. TED Connect is amazing. It's just absolutely amazing. So, so firstly, I made it a few weeks prior to going to TED in early April. I don't know whether Mel is still with us, because I know she was going to be called away. I have a weekly thinking partnership conversation with Mel. And I had a conversation with Mel, and I said, oh, you know, I need to get my head around, because my aunt was in the hospital. She had just died. It was just that horrible time. I was struggling to figure out how I'm going to do this. And I said to Mel, I need to make the most of this TED thing, because I've paid all this money and I need to make sure that it works. And so the two of us had a conversation, and I decided that I was going to make an effort to actually figure out who these 1,800 people are. I had it was such an inspirational experience to go through the TED Connect thing. And what I did is I looked at every single person. What's their story? What's their background? And then, this is the little secret to all of you, I then sent 200, I discovered later that it was 200 LinkedIn invitation to the 200 people that kind of grabbed my attention between A and M, I think. So these are all surnames in their surnames. And I wrote all of the names down like that in my book. You can't see, but I wrote them all down, and then I made a little note around their story and why I'm interested and why would I like to talk to them. And I sent my invitations, but what I didn't know is that there is a limit. You're only allowed to send 200 LinkedIn invitations in 1 week. So if you ever get a chance to do this and you want to start long in advance, don't wait for the last week to kind of send all your LinkedIn invitations. But what he did is I was then able to walk into the room, and the first person I saw, there was a TED Women kind of grouping, and the first person I saw was Lisa Bragg. And I remember reading Lisa Bragg's story on TED Connect and reading that she had just written a book, and the book is called Bragging Rights. The name, everything just kind of connected. And I walked up and said, Lisa, you are the woman who wrote the book about bragging rights. My word, it felt like such a moment for both of us. Nobody did that with me, by the way, but anyway, I could do that with her, and it made her feel special. And you know, that was kind of just a nice thing to do. So I did invite those people. I didn't meet with many of them, but there's a connection, and I will go back at some point, and I'm kind of see where that will go in future. I also then decided, well, that's fine with these 1,800 people, but what am I going to do with my own community? So initially, the first thing I did is I set up the time and date for this particular session, because I don't know about you guys. Again, this is me taking my own experience seriously. I've learned that when I go to a session with an expectation to share what I've learned afterwards, I participate differently. I take different kinds of notes because I know I'm going to have to share it. And I just think that's such a good practice. It's definitely a good practice for me. It holds me accountable. It says that I'm not just doing this for myself. I'm doing this with a spirit of generosity. It's an opportunity for me to kind of really just pause and reflect and think, what do I want to share? If I've only got 2 hours and I want to kind of, talk about 2 weeks, sorry, it felt 2 weeks, 5 days. What do I focus my attention on? So really want to encourage that to everybody. And then I thought, but how am I going to get people to come to today's session? And that's where the WhatsApp group came from, because when Helen and I did the Peru trip last year, we were on the WhatsApp group. We created a WhatsApp group, and so I'd love to just pause here for a moment and hear from a few of you who were on that WhatsApp group. Just anything about your experience of being on that WhatsApp group. I was so conscious of the fact that, we were awake in Vancouver when you were asleep, most of you, and I didn't know how people were going to feel about me, and I really wanted to think about what am I going to share and what am I not sharing. But I'd love to hear, good, bad, and ugly, anybody who was on the WhatsApp group. What can I learn from, if I ever get a chance to do this again? How should I do it differently next time? I almost said it felt like we were there, you were there with me. That's great, Elmo, but please, open your mics and tell us. We just want to hear your voice. I want to stop talking for a bit until someone else speaks.
Yeah,
Louise,
I'll go.
go for it, Melissa.
So we'll go to
Thanks.
Melissa and then to Manine. Thank you. And then
I'll
Cal.
go. I have to say, Louise, I love the WhatsApp group. I took such inspiration from that group. It really did feel like I was with you on the journey, and I shared from the WhatsApp group. I love the photo of the steps with possibility. I loved that photo. I love the quote. And I shared that on sort of my social places, and platforms and with people. And let me just tell you, the reaction when I shared things and the reaction I got from other people was like, oh, that's such an interesting conversation. Thank you so much for sharing these interesting. And I felt so chuffed, not as if it wasn't like, I'm just literally passing on information. But but I have to say, I thought it was such a great way to be able to journey with you. So thank you so much for setting that up.
Thank you, Melissa. Yeah, so I can't tell you how much that means to hear that, because you're kind of not sure. And because we set it up, and the other reason, so we've set it up as a broadcast group, because you know that right at the beginning, I said to people, share while you join, and we lost kind of 5 people immediately left. So we don't want to be part of the group where there's all this chit chat. So it's hard, because I quite like to have those kind of engaging sessions, but so the broadcast was to kind of limit the volume of activity. But thanks, Melissa. Let's hear from Muneen, because she was open just now, and then we'll hear from Kelly and then from Karen.
Yeah, I think Louise probably echoing what Melissa's saying, and I actually appreciated the broadcast group, I'll be honest. And I really enjoyed your excitement really sort of shone through your tone and what you shared. And what I really enjoyed is sort of the highlights. I really enjoyed the fact that you sort of drew our attention to particular talks that I think are very relevant. In that case, I mean, the reason why I joined that WhatsApp group is because it's also one of my dreams, but also it's sort of, I think the TED Talks help us to stay relevant in terms of current events and the thinking around that. And I think that's really what I found very useful about your WhatsApp group. Thank you very much for taking the time and energy to do that, because I do believe that's quite a lot of energy that goes into sharing it with us.
Fantastic. Thank you, Manine. Who else? Kel. So Kel Mundy is a South African friend who now lives in London, and it's so nice that we connected on this. Kelly.
Thank you, Louise. Yeah, and I think Manine and Melissa have said what I wanted to say. I've known you for 20 years, and you're just a complete inspiration to me. But I could just feel your excitement, and every day I was looking forward to, and when your thing popped up on the WhatsApp, I was, it was palpable. I think that's the word. I could feel your energy, and I think you are everything possible and everything generous. So I just want to take this opportunity to say thank you, Louise.
Oh, wow, Kelly, that's so nice of you to say that. Oh, it makes me feel quite emotional. Thank you. Karen.
So, well, Louise, from my side, I felt rather doff. Every time you shared somebody, I thought, I've never heard of this person, and what do they do? So you really got my curiosity. I had to Google them all, find them. And then, of course, that was a one rabbit hole. So I spent a lot of time. I actually had to be quite disciplined about who am I going to choose to follow. So thank you for just opening the world to, and particularly the creatives. I think now that I understand what TED stands for, but when you have that, the poets and the artists, those that encourage us to show up with so creatively, it sparked so much for me. So thank you for showing me my ignorance and how slow I am. I learned a lot. Thank you.
Well, Karen, and I just have to say that I don't think any of us knew any of these people. This is the beautiful thing around TED, is that you hear, I mean, some of those people got me. I was like absolutely mesmerized, thinking, how did I live my life without knowing about some of these talks? It's going to blow your mind. I mean, the initial ones are the ones that we should probably know the names, but if we don't, we'll find it out. But some of these people are obscure, but they are involved with the most amazing things. Mark.
Yeah, thank you, Louise. And the richness of some of the content. So 2 standout bits were the Pussy Riot lady, for example. Like to have someone like that. So I know about Pussy Riot, and even the name is somewhat, you know, do you bring that up in conversation? It's like punk ethos, but yet challenging the system in a good way, you know, and having a voice. So that really was, I was wowed by the fact that someone like that is invited to speak at TED. And then the other thing, thank you for giving a balanced perspective. My best friend actually is in the education sector. And we've been arguing about ChatGPT, and then that came through. So so you enabled a conversation with my own friend about ChatGPT, because I've been leaning towards the darkness of it, and he's been leaning towards the light. And so we're both together finding each other and having a more balanced perspective. So just through a WhatsApp group, you know, it ripples into our lives, right? And enters conversations. And so for me, that's value. So thank you.
Thanks, Mark. And let's hear from Bez. And then Emily's got a question which I'd love to answer, Emily. Bez.
Hi, Louise. Sorry, I'm in a bit of a mess. I'm working from home today, so I don't want to put my camera. Yeah, so I was in the group and I absolutely loved it. All the different speakers and all the AI and the different, the diverse types of topics that you are attending. Although I couldn't keep up with watching some of the videos themselves because I was quite busy. And I just want to say thank you for sharing the journey because I'm always inquisitive to find out what's the latest, what is about technology and stuff like that. So that's why I was following you. And don't worry, I didn't mind the later or early messages. It was fine.
Thanks, Bez. I kind of kept waiting. I just want to wait until it's 6 o'clock in the morning in South Africa before I can start. Thanks, Bez. And let's hear from Carmen before I answer Emily's question.
For me, I've heard about TED Talks when it initially started, because somebody that works in peace building really raved about having to tap into it. But at some point, I couldn't follow everything. But the way you actually correlated the information for me was amazing, because it just shows how TED, the TEDx is bridging the gap between different people from different walks of life. And I think that for me stood out. And the lessons we as South Africans can learn in terms of bridging the gap. And thank you so much. And it also contributes to what I am currently involved in. So thank you so much for sharing your journey. I really appreciated that.
Fantastic, Carmen. And then Elaine, you're going to have the last word on this part, and then we'll continue later. But let's hear from Elaine.
Yeah, so I just loved, because I have a massive debate with my friends about TikTok and what it does to generations and how it impacts. But TikTok by the CEO was just awesome. I shared it with loads and loads of my colleagues. So thank you for that. We've had lots of debates thereafter. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and you know that TikTok thing really got me interested, because I have been in the same way that I've been my head in the sand around ChatGPT. I've kind of going, TikTok's got nothing to do with me. And now that I've listened to that guy, I'm kind of curious about TikTok. I really am curious about TikTok. I think there's something interesting in it. And I think if we use it correctly, who knows what the future might hold. So he definitely managed to convince me. Maybe I'm just gullible, and Paul will have to tell me, because Paul's good with that. But that guy got me interested. Okay, so here, let me tell you a little bit more about what I've thought, in terms, because I did prepare for this. So I need to get my head, make sure that I use what I've prepared. So who gets to be there? Well, a lot of it is made possible through a small group of people called patrons and donors. And these are the richest of the rich of the rich of the rich around the world, and they pay a lot of money to be there. So someone can do the sums, but they pay $25,000 per person, and most of them do not come as an individual. So they are the kind of engine behind, or, making this happen. And that group clearly has been built up over many years. They get special entry into the theatre. So when you look at the pictures of the theatre, that the first 5 or 6 rows and the soft, comfy chairs are for the patrons and the donors. They go in early. So the doors, they have a different door only for patrons and donors, and their name badge look different. Oh, sorry, Emily, I should answer the question around that anybody asked me. So on my badge, it says, talk to me about South Africa and Ubuntu, were the 2 things that nobody asked me about Ubuntu, sadly. But because of Ben, many people ask me about Partners for Possibility, because Ben Zander made a big thing and often talked about what we've been doing in South Africa. So there was quite a lot of interest in Partners for Possibility, and I didn't have that on my, please ask me about it, but it was also, and what I didn't mention before is when I talked about communities. So there's the TED Connect, and then there's the WhatsApp groups nowadays, which is a new thing. So I got an invitation to join Women at TED, the Women at TED WhatsApp group, very early on. It was sent to me on the TED Connect platform. I just want to see what the number is now. And this was just the most interesting group. It was a very chatty, very noisy group, but there's about 400 women on this group, and they were so nice and so supportive and so kind to each other and so sharing. And so we all felt so welcome. And then there was another group for first timers. So why did I tell you that story? So on that group, I made a comment somewhere, excited to see Ben Zander because he changed the trajectory of my life. So they said, tell us more. So then I shared a little bit on that. So there was a lot of people were interested and interesting. And we kind of made connections on WhatsApp, which then allowed us to be connected on TED Connect or in the session. So on your badge, you carry a little, what do you call those things that can track where you are? Someone should know what it is, but there's a thing that can track you. So at any point you can say, where is this person at the moment? And it will show if you're in the convention center that the person is in the theater, or they're in the loop, or they're at the start, wherever. So you can kind of track them down based on their little tag as to where they are at any one point. So I was going back to who gets to go. So I think there were probably about 100 of those donors and patrons, typically husband and wife, retired, lots and lots of money. This is the place where they go every year. They're not part of YPO anymore because they've probably retired already, or they are still part of YPO and now they come to TED, and they come with big bags of money. And then there are probably about 100 or 200 people who are speakers or staff who come for nothing. So they or journalists. There's quite a lot of people who write about TED, and then they come on a free pass. And then there's the ordinary attendees who paid $10,000 per ticket. So they typically senior managers or middle to senior managers in large organizations, and their companies would pay, or their academics and their universities would pay. And then there's the people like us. So I pleaded poverty, so I got a sponsored ticket, half-price ticket, and but you can only get that once. So I'm already stressing out around what on earth am I going to do, because I'd love to go back next year, but I definitely don't have that kind of money to spend again. So so those are the people who are on the program, or they who are part of the 1,800 delegates. Where do I want to go? Okay, so that's the background, that's the kind of content. So then we arrived. So for those of you who are not on the WhatsApp group, I want to quickly share the screen with you just to give you a sense, because the people on the WhatsApp group have already seen this. And so they've benefited from that. So let me just quickly show you a few pictures. This is just a few. I'm not going to bore you with lots of, it's like going on having to watch the slideshow of someone being on holiday. But this is the Vancouver Convention Center as you arrive, big TED sign. Vancouver Convention Center is just absolutely beautiful. I don't think I've even got a picture, but you're in the convention center and you look out over the water, and then you see the snow-capped mountains in the distance. It's just beautiful. And then I met the guy who's responsible for Vancouver branding or tourism or whatever. And I said, I'm from Cape Town. He says, oh, Cape Town is just as beautiful as Vancouver. I thought, yes, exactly. So that was the picture that Melissa referred to earlier, which is the stairway to possibility. And then that on the right-hand side, you see that screen, that's the possibility branding, which I'm going to show you something in a minute. And I want to get the slides out of the way. So I'll come back to this entry on the Sunday afternoon as we walked into the room, and this is what we saw. And I tell you, I don't think I've ever been quite as excited as in that moment. So then in the first evening, we had a first timers dinner, which was just delightful because Esther Perel, who's one of my big kind of, heroes, spoke, and she specifically spoke around how do we make the most of a situation where we don't know anybody, and yet the value is going to come from being connected, and how do we connect? And she introduced us to her game, which she's developed to help people get connected. I'm personally not a fan of the game because I thought that those questions are I don't know whether I want to have those kind of conversations with people, but it was kind of fun, and it was nice to have her there. So that was the first evening. And also the other thing is she was sitting, they were on the chair and we were all sitting on the floor, and it just felt so, there was no pretense. There was just a complete lack of pretentiousness in this whole, it's a smart venue, it's smart people, but you never got the idea that people were being, I don't know, it just felt really real, and I loved the realness. So this was the first evening, and it was our first experience. What was also interesting is how they take, it is a production. So for example, this is I showed this earlier, that was the little desserts as we walked out of the first evening, and it just gave you a sense of what's going to come, because every meal, the food was unbelievable and so thoughtful. It feels like everybody in Vancouver brought their absolute best contribution to this, and I think in return to do that they probably got some kind of tickets for free or something, but they brought the most beautiful food. So, and then they kept referring to them as in-kind contributors. So, and then this is another example. There were coffee on tap. Every coffee outlet in Vancouver had a stall. And so Smoking Gun Coffee was my favorite place. That's where I used to go back to all the time. But they say Smoking Gun Coffee is about building connections through exceptional coffee experiences. We hope you enjoy every sip. And they have a program where they make coffee available to people even if they can't afford it. And then that was so the theatre is the kind of main part of the convention center. And right around the theatre, we have what they call the loop. And in the loop were all of the, there was some VR, some virtual reality sessions set up, and the vinyl lounge was in the loop, and people were dancing, and there was lots of merriment. But this was just one example in just to give, sorry, did anybody, okay, I don't know whether that was someone just speaking, but but this gives you an idea of the size of this. So those doors that you see at the bottom there, that's the entrance into the theatre, which is all built because this is not normally how that kind of room is set up. And then these massive big posters to say these are the speakers. So you had this beautiful sense of spaciousness with looking out over the bay of the ocean. So it's just all so beautifully done. But then while you're standing in the queue, they're in that on that first evening and on the WhatsApp groups and all the advices, make the most of the queue. So that first standing in the queue, and Chip Conley walked past, and he was one of the people that I had marked on my list of people I want to talk to. So I rushed over to him and said, Chip, you're one of my, I'm a big fan of your work. And we just had a kind of short conversation. We just didn't get another chance to have a conversation, but there was an immediate connection created, partly because I kind of knew that he was going to be there. I kept an eye open for him. And so my learning is, if I ever do this again, is to really make the most of understanding this. So this is the theatre with the very well-known red dot. So in this particular theatre, the red dot's quite big. So people go onto the red dot when they do their presentations. And this is a great scene for you to see that those blue couches, the soft seats, are for the donors and patrons. Now, when the doors open, the donors and patrons go in first. So they're in there already. Then the doors open, then the, normal people come in. But I kind of learned how to do this. So I ended up most of the time on the soft blue benches and loved it, and had really interesting conversations with people sitting there. And that's just getting an idea. Now, what I did when I took this picture is I broke the rules, because the rules are that the theatre is a completely screen-free environment. So no iPads, phones, computers, nothing. If you want to take notes, you do it on your notebook, because the screens has an impact on people's experience, and they don't want that to happen. And then that's just an idea that I think this is the first evening, or one of the first sessions, is just that kind of beautiful sense of a packed theatre. People were kind of getting ready to put their phones away so that they could be present for the contribution. So they kind of allow you to do what you need to do. But the moment the lights go down, screens go off, and they will come and tap you on your shoulder if your screen is out. And then that's just Ben's in the first, I kind of sat very close to him. This was not my picture, but and they keep saying to you, don't take pictures in the theatre, because there are professional photographers and they take this kind of picture. But I had a wonderful experience of Ben that first evening. And then there's a whole series of people around the world who do these sketch notes. So this is just one example of one of the people who did a sketch note about Ben's session. So those get released and shared afterwards. And you will remember that when Ben was here, he was telling the story about Beyond the Fuck It. So that kind of made it into one of the sketch notes, and there's many more. And then the AI story was session 2. That was just a kind of example of, and I'm not going to go through all 12 sessions like that. But the thing that those of you not on the WhatsApp group would find, which was a bit mind-blowing, is every evening the next morning, when you get your, this is what's on, this is what's going to happen today, you get a picture on your personalized email, and 9 out of 10 times that picture is one that was taken of you the previous day. Now, they couldn't on this, you can see this picture, there's no way that they knew my name. So this is an AI facilitated process to make sure that I get a picture with my picture. I get an email with pictures that were taken of me in the previous day, which is all a bit scary. And then I wanted to this is from one of the sketch notes, in the session 2, which was all around AI, Chris asked the question, he said, who in this room are excited and who's concerned? And about 55% of people, was by show of hands. So I don't know how he did that calculation, but anyway, he said half of the room are excited about AI and half of the room are concerned. And if you then spend that whole session was around all of the pros and the cons. So there's lots of reasons for us to be concerned, clearly, but there's also lots of reason to be very excited. And then this is my favorite quote. It's in my bedroom, actually. And it's part of the reason why I went to TED. It's just this Mary Oliver quote that says, tell me, what is it that you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? And I'm so delighted that my wild and precious life included at least one main TED. So that's the pictures done. Anybody want to say anything or comment about what you've seen here? Kathy says she has to go. I'm just watching to go in space. I also want to go again. So I'm just checking whether anybody wants to say anything. Doesn't look like it. Shall we keep going? I'm watching all the screens go off, so I'm worried that I'm losing you all, but I'll keep going. Emily.
Yes, hi. Go. Here I am. No, I was just wondering how easy it was to, I mean, you said you prepared to talk to people and were quite intentional about it, but how easy was it to just start a conversation, and how quickly did it go quite deep?
No, so you're standing in, you do stand quite a bit of time in queues. So, depending on where, if you're happy to sit at the back in a stupid seat, then you would only queue for about 10, 15 minutes before you go into the main theater. But if you were like me, I kind of stood in the queue every time for about 40 minutes. And in every one of those queue conversations, I had the most interesting conversations. So one story, which is kind of like, oh my goodness, how did we end up here? One of the guys and I, he had on his he's a big black guy, but on his name badge it says he's involved in an organization called Fathers Uplift. So I had a great conversation. I don't know whether Mzamo is with us, and I told him about Mzamo, who is one of our Partners for Possibility in Durban, and what Mzamo was doing, and I showed him some pictures about Mzamo, and then I told him about Math Mums and what Math Mums are doing, which is this amazing conversation. And we were like so enjoying ourselves, and the women behind us were clearly kind of eavesdropping on the conversation, but she was like quietly standing there. And then we got into living together apart. Linda knows that, I'm kind of fascinated by that idea. And then we talked about how sometimes, so please, those people who are leaving, if you want to send me your details, we can add you to the WhatsApp group, and then you'll know about the talks as they get released. And then she said her mum and dad had 2 different bedrooms. So we talked about how sometimes if people snore, because I think he snored and therefore he was in a different bedroom. And then I kind of looked at her name badge, and she's Ken Robinson's daughter. Wait, and on her WhatsApp group was the Ken Robinson's Legacy Institute. I'm going, oh, Ken Robinson's was one of my. So that's the kind of things that happen, is you like in this conversation, and then every single person who was there was someone who I wanted to get to know better and spend time with. And that's my dream for South Africa, is if we can have that experience of just falling in love with each other in this way. Because imagine if we brought all of the people involved in Partners Possibility, for example. Rita, please, can you send me a WhatsApp? If you send it on here, it's not going to, I'm going to lose it. But if you send me a WhatsApp, I'll add you like that. So Emily, it felt very easy. It was like everybody was expecting that the conversations in the queues was where it happens. It's when you get food, and then you've got food. The food was just phenomenal, but there's, the big trucks were outside, and so we were, all the conversations. The first evening was all around the conversations for first timers. Then the next evening we had the conversations which was around the dinners to talk about it. So you chose a particular topic. When you drove on, so we were on the bus, we were going to the sailing the first day. I went kayaking the first time. On the bus, you're sitting next to someone, there's an expectation that you're going to have a conversation. Then when you're on the boat, you're going to be with someone else in the boat, then that's a conversation. Then when you come back, there's going to be another person. So I've probably got about, I've tracked it, because every time you talk, you then scan each other's badges, and you get connected on the TED Connect group. So I've probably got about 86 people that I've had kind of meaningful enough conversations that we felt we wanted to be connected beyond the experience. So yeah, and it was very easy.
I guess you're not scared that you're meeting someone boring, so that's
no, and there's no chance. So it's a bit of a challenge for me around. It's like the people who are going to the main TED are someone interesting, but I think people who we're going to invite to our session, it's also going to be interesting. And it's different. It's not people that I would normally hang out with. I don't normally hang out with people who are interested in AI. And goodness, I loved hearing about all this AI stuff. I'm like so excited about what's possible. So it is about being with people that are, and people know that there's an expectation that you're going to be connected. And those who don't want to be connected, it's very clear, like there's a big wall between them. They don't stand in the queue. Oh, I'll tell you about the gift hub, Anita. Yes, remind me. I'll do it at the end. But remind me to do it. Yeah, so I think you can curate a session that says this is about building community. Yes, we are here, you know, the story is we're here to see the TED Talks. One of the women said to me, she got advice to say, you can always watch the talks later. Be in the conversation. The talks are it's secondary. It's the conversations, it's the connection. That's what matters most. Kuba and then Steph.
Louise, I want to take you back when you showed us the photo of Esther Perel. I follow her ardently. You said that she had a game with some questions that you would never ask. Just give us at least one or two.
No, but it was questions that I think take people into the so what are the things that you wish people didn't, or that you wish people didn't know about you? So it didn't come from a positive psychology perspective. It kind of felt very vulnerable making, and it just didn't feel comfortable. I wouldn't want that. But if you say to me, what are you passionate about? What do you wish people know about you? Or just, I think it's just from a positive psychology perspective, it didn't feel like it came from a positive psychology perspective. That's what I wish I had all this time to tell you all the stories. There's the story about Jess and Jeffrey, which blew my mind. So I'm going to very quickly tell the story because I think that anyway, I'm going to tell the story. I'm not going to make any assumptions. Steph, ask your first question first because I'm going to forget. But I want to tell you about Jess and Jeffrey.
Well, I also want to hear about Jess and Jeffrey. I don't know who they are, but I'm looking forward to hearing. But what struck me as you've been sharing about the experience of connecting in the TED community, it takes me right back to my very first community building experience, which was the second ever session in Johannesburg. And we had such a diverse group of people, and we weren't launching PFP folk were in the group, but it wasn't all about PFP at that stage. It was really about getting diverse people of South Africa in the room together. And it was electric. And every community building experience is electric, but that one stands out in my mind, not just because it's the first one, but because it was people from all echelons of life. And the thought of being able to create something like that again, where it's a diverse from all over, yes, I want to be part of that community building process.
Exactly. And then we can have some TED speakers who can do a bit of, provocateur stuff, but it's about the kind of being, and we can curate the community. Exactly, Steve, because the one thing that's bothered me about TED is how exclusive it is. It is just really rich people who get to go, and then a few. So in South Africa, I kept saying to people, we can't do things in South Africa that it's so kind of only for the rich. We have to make it more accessible to everybody. So there's going to have to be a way of, maybe we'll get people from corporates to pay, and then their ticket pays for two others, and then there's some kind of way in which people can apply and based on the work they're doing in the community or something. But we probably won't call it TED, because the TED brand makes it hard to do that kind of stuff, except if you want to do TEDx, and we want to do something that crosses communities. So, but community building linked into, I'm absolutely with you. So just a very quick story about Jess and Jeffrey. So on the TED for women at TED group, one of the women says, before the session, before we go actually, I make films, and then Jess says, I've got a fantastic love story for you, a 30-year love story across decades and genders. So I go, I'm very interested, tell me more. So Jess tells the story that Jess used to be Jeffrey, and Jeffrey had a girlfriend, and the girlfriend weren't ready to get married when Jeffrey wanted to get married. And so they broke up, and Jeffrey got married, and the girlfriend got married and whatever. And then 30 years later, they connected on LinkedIn, and the girlfriend said to who she thought was Jeffrey, what are you doing, and what are you up to? And Jeffrey said, well, I live here in this place, but I'm now Jess. And the girlfriend said, oh, that's absolutely fine. And Jess and this girlfriend are now getting married. Jess is now a woman, and she's getting married with this girlfriend who she had 30 years ago, because they were but the thing is, so I heard the story on the WhatsApp group, and then the very first day, who stands in front of me in the queue? Jess. We had this amazing conversation, and then we had lunch together. And Jess, the stories that Jess told me about her relationship with this girlfriend, I kept thinking, oh my word, if the world could all have a relationship with like Jess and this girlfriend, it would be a better place. And then I kept bumping into Jess the whole time, but Jess just blew my mind. Okay. So let me quickly talk about the gift hub. No, I'm going to talk serious stuff here. I'll come back to the gift hub. So I just want to quickly talk a little bit about what happened in the theatre, because I've now talked about everything else, but let me talk to you about what happened in the theatre, especially for those who were not part of the group, because those who were in the group will remember. So on the Monday, well, actually not just the theatre, what happened on the whole program. So on the Monday, the day starts late, so we all arrive. The first timers went to the dinner on the Tuesday evening. The Monday starts with discovery sessions. So the very first thing we did is, well, we had lunch. Oh, I need to tell you about the check-in. Oh my word. So I read the book Unreasonable Hospitality, where they tell the story about and it was a talk. There was an interview between Simon Sinek and this guy. I can't remember his name, Greg or something. But Unreasonable Hospitality, it's a restaurant in New York, Madison Square, who wanted that, and they wanted to be the best restaurant in the world. And they realized that they couldn't do that based on just the food they served. They needed to focus on what happens in the dining room, in the kind of hospitality part. And long story short, they decided they're going to be known for unreasonable hospitality. And the book is fabulous. Please read the book, Unreasonable Hospitality, and let me know when you've read it. It will change your mind, blow your mind. But one of the things they've done is they've decided that they wanted to welcome people when they arrive in a way that you would when people come to a dinner party. So if it's Paul Steenkamp arriving, you'll walk into the restaurant, they'll go, hello, Paul, how's your book sales doing, given that you've just, done it. And I saw that you were at TED last week, and I wondered whether so they literally researched people, and so that they would feel the sense of kind of being connected with people. And they did it by using social media, and they had spies. So as people walked up to the restaurant, there will be people saying, it's Paul, because they would have profiled all the people on the list for this evening. So at TED, you arrive and you get to the bottom of the stairs, and they check you in. They say, oh, what's your name? And I say, I'm Louise van Rhyn. I'm from Cape Town. Oh, hello, Louise. Welcome. We're so happy you're here. When you get to the top of the stairs, there will be someone will give you your badge and your goodie bag. So you walk up to the top of the stairs, and out of the blue comes someone. Hello, Louise. We're so happy that you're here from Cape Town. We can't wait to hear your stories about Partners for Possibility. Here's your gift bag. That's the kind of place I want to hang out. I don't want to kind of stand in a queue and have someone raffle through all the things. They came and they gave it in my hand, and they gave me my gift bag, and the gift bag's fabulous, but it was so lovely. So anyway, that's the start. That's how this whole thing, and I think this was a bit freaky because it's the first time it happened. So this year there's a discovery session, and the discovery session is people just kind of get to hang together. It's a bit of connection before content. And then session one is where we started off with a bang, and a beautiful combination of, neuroscience-based AI opera, which kind of blew my mind a bit. And that guy who did the AI impersonation of Tom Cruise, and then Ben Zander was the end, and Ben got us all to sing Ode to Joy together, which you can imagine what that did. And then they threw a party, the party of all parties. Even though they say at the beginning, please make sure that you sleep enough, they have all these parties, but I didn't stay long. I didn't stay long for the party. And then the next morning, so that was the Monday. Next morning starts off with a big theatre session. So that was the whole AI session, and I will share those AI talks as they can become available. Then there was a second session, morning session, that doesn't happen often, but there was a morning session where they just looked at what goes on in the world. And it was all the way from, there was a political demographer. Yeah, maybe that's the right word to say, demographer. There was someone who was talking around civil wars. There was a political scientist, you know, just complete diversity of topics. Another discovery session, this time I participated. That's where they took that photograph in the session that they called Taking Ideas Behind the Stage. And it was a reflection on what have we heard so far and what are we going to do about it. Then there's a session 4, which it says, in which we ponder ideas that are way, way out there. I promise you. So the one guy, Ali Hajimiri, I can't wait for his talk to come out, is exploring with his lab and his team how to deploy energy from space by putting big solar, like it's like foil. They roll up the foil, take it to space, deploy it. It becomes a big thing that catches energy, and then they send it to a particular device on Earth. Anyway, I kept saying, can't you come and do it now? Because we definitely need it. And he wasn't ready to do that. And then Nadia from Pussy Riot. Oh my word. Please watch that video of Nadia. She had me, all of us were in tears. You know, and then Machine Dazzle, who was this big, he was there in Lycra and big high heel shoes, and he lost me completely, but it was so interesting to see that. And then Peter McIndoe, who's a bird truther. He's just the most interesting guy. But he decided, he was homeschooled, and he decided that birds aren't real. Well, it was an experiment. He decided that he was going to go into the world and make the case that birds are not actually birds. Birds are drones created by the US government to spy on Americans, and they aren't real. And he created this whole following around the country, and people who would, you know, have big demonstrations in cities to argue that birds aren't real, they're all drones, and it's, you know, it's a conspiracy theory. And it was all just an experiment. And the story, his experience of being at the heart of kind of appearing to be completely delusional, but he was all doing it just to kind of, so interesting to hear that. So that's that. And then that evening we had, again, with something that we had planned for if we were going to do African Leadership Week in Stellenbosch, was this idea of table talks. So people decided up front, I wanted to be in the Better Business table talk session, which means I sent a whole group of people, you know, spent the evening with a fantastic group of people talking about better business. And then, this was Tuesday evening, then the party continued. So people were doing other stuff after that. Quick thing on the Wednesday morning, session 5, which was about imagining a pathway to sustainable future. Session 6 was in which we discover how our brains might soon get upgraded. Yeah, I can't even talk about all the stuff that I saw there. It was just like so way out, but so important. And then by this time your brain is fried. So I went sailing in a little dinghy in the Vancouver Bay for my discovery session. And then session 7 was all the coaches that would love that. It was around in which we breathe deep and embrace humanity's full potential. So really interesting guy. The guy who I think we all need to pay attention to is Richard Reeves, who wrote a book on men and boys around how men are really struggling and why it's time for us to rethink how we engage with men and how we think about boys' schools. He think all the boys should go to school a year later, maybe 2 years later, because their brains take longer to develop. And it's unfair, or they should go to boys-only schools, because it's unfair to put them in the same classroom as a girl, because they have a very different development trajectory. So worth watching. I mean, in that session, we were hearing about foster care. Coleman Hughes got such flack around his colorblind thing, but it's, again, interesting to watch. Anne Morris she's one of us. She's a leadership kind of person. And then Sarah Jones, oh my word, she was one of the women in leadership. She had an experience of, she's a very well-known she does solo theater shows, and she created a one-man show that was incredibly successful, and then that was made into a movie, and she was being cancelled by the people, and she just had that experience. And those of you who know my story will know that she touched every button in my heart. So anyway, Sarah Jones' session, that will come, I'll send you. And then on the Wednesday evening, I'm so embarrassed, there's a thing that everybody goes to. It's arranged by Amanda Palmer. It's called TED Ninja. It's a fringe event. It's not, main TED event, but everybody goes, and she gets Al Gore to come and do a thing, and then Ben Zander would say something, and she has all the people who are on the stage to come and do something fun. And I went back to the hotel to just have half an hour to sleep, and then I fell asleep. And I missed TED Ninja, so I'll have to go again just to kind of. Then the next day, which is now we're almost getting to the end, Thursday morning, this session was called Session 8, in which we delightedly and unapologetically nerd out. It was amazing. There's a woman who talks about pain management. There's an ocean conservation guy. There's a person who does who is involved in cellular dysfunction research. So those will all come. They're amazing. Session 9 was around preparing for the inevitable chaos ahead. Women from CamFed. Oh my word, they're an amazing organization. A reproductive health advocate. He was talking about everybody should have an option to have access to what do you call it, to contraception. He's got an amazing program that he runs. For some reason, my hand's up and I don't know how to get that down right now. There was a woman, Alua Arthur. She's a death doula. She supports people as they prepare for death. As they know they're going to die, and then she supports them in preparing for dying. And her talk was amazing. There was another woman, Becky Kennedy. She's a parenting whisperer, and she was making the case that every time when there's a rupture, when a parent does something where the relationship, might kind of gets damaged, there's an opportunity for repair. So definitely worth watching when that comes out. So I'm almost done. That was session 8, 9, because I want to just hear some thoughts from you. Then I went to lunch with Ben, and we had a wonderful reminiscing of all of the stuff we did in the past. Session 10, we had the TikTok CEO, and then a whole bunch of other people who were talking about the impact of AI on design. Session 11, which was the second last session. Oh, my word. Lonica Gordain, her talk will come out soon. Vino Daniel, it was a climate responsive architect from India. Oh, my word. Misan Hariman, he's a photographer, and so his talk is so worth watching. So all of those I will share with you. Imran Chaudhry, He says we need to get away from screens. Screens have run our lives. He's ex-Apple. He's developing a AI virtual assistant who will not have a screen associated with him. Amazing. And then Lucas Risotto, I want my child to watch that one. Then there was a massive house party. I don't know how people got up the next day. I didn't stay long for that because I had dinner with Mike from Addison Courses. And then the last session was this just wonderful. I had to leave, but we had, for example, Jacob Collier, that guy who gets everybody to sing. He was one of those, he conducted us all to sing. So now I'm kind of running out of I don't have words anymore. I will right at the end quickly tell the Gift Hub story for those people, the people who are long sufferers. But let's hear any thoughts, responses. I just want to make this happen in South Africa. That's what I want to do now. But I don't think under the TED brand, because the licensing will make it. I just want us to hang together in rooms and fall in love with each other and get excited about who we are and what we can all do together. Emily.
I asked you on WhatsApp, so you say you want to organize a gathering, but are there any low-hanging fruits? Is there anything that you come back with and say, right, we got to do this now?
No, because I think, I really believe that there are interesting things that people are up to, but none of those are transferable to South Africa. I think it's for us to create a similar experience for us, to be excited about people in South Africa. I don't have there's nobody who I thought, oh, we do need to bring that person to South Africa to come and teach us something, or we have not done a great job of creating opportunities of kind of giving voice to amazing things that are happening in South Africa. I think if we had to put the same amount of effort into curating South African people who are doing interesting things in all of those areas, technology, education, entertainment, design, all of those, it will blow our minds. So that was my point, Emily. There's none of that. I mean, the talks are interesting. They're mind-blowing what these people are doing in their labs. They kind of, but I think for me, it's definitely not about what happened in the theater. It's about what happened. It's all the stuff around the theater for me. Now there's other people I've been watching people, because now obviously all these journalists have to write a 6,000 word or a 2,000 word essay around their TED experience. It's almost impossible to kind of take from the different talks, and we're all going to watch those talks again, because the talks will come. We're going to watch it, but it's not for implementation. I didn't come back with things that I want to implement now. Except I want to get confident about AI. I don't want to be afraid of AI. I want to understand the Web3 world, because that's not a world that I know. And the metaverse, those are places that I want to hang out. AI, Web3, that's the kind of technology stuff that I've been pushing aside. And then it's the value of bringing people together in a room with interesting, provocative content, and then creating opportunities for people to be outside of that space, into nature, and go for a walk, whatever.
I'll be there.
Well, at least, so it's going to be you and I at this point, Emily. Maybe there'll be more. Carmen, I see your hands up.
This is actually very interesting, because it's something that I've been pondering on for quite some time, that we don't tell the positive story, because we have been so conditioned around the negative. And there is so much happening in our space that we don't pay attention to, because we get flooded with negative news. So the first thing that we need to do, I think, is find those projects. And there are many of those projects. I've attended a few. One of the things that I attended last year was called this new organization called Sports for Change, that was honoring people making a difference in communities through sports. And the guy that won, but it's an African organization, so the guy that got the main award, he was working with disability kids in basketball. He left his coaching career with, you know, normal. And so, and in that event, I actually discovered so much wonderful things happening in South Africa, but also continentally. And I think it would be very important for us to get all those projects, not all, we won't be able to get all initially, but to get some of those projects on board so that we can tell that positive story about South Africa.
But this is the thing, Carmen. I think we have such a strong community that if we said to all of the people in that community, go and find one thing that other people should know about to be inspired by, it will be like this. You know, it will not take us long. But then the other thing is, if we could get to, I kept saying to people like, you know, Wayne Divinoch from Outa and these amazing leaders, and we just put them on stage. I want to get to know them as a person. I want to get to know their heart. And that's only going to happen when we're in spaces together. So, Carmen, I think, I don't want to interrupt you there, but I think a few other people want to say something as well. The reality is that between us, if you make your list of 5 projects and Sue did that and Emily did that and whatever, we will have a list that will blow your mind. But we're not sharing.
I agree.
So we need to create an opportunity for us to be inspired by each other. And then if we tell our own stories, we don't know each other's stories yet. So we need to be enchanted by each other. We need to create opportunities for us to be enchanted by each other. That's what I think we need to do. I've been enchanted by lots of people this week in Vancouver, and I'm like feeding on that energy. It's just been amazing. Thanks, Carmen. Anybody else want to say something? Or Sue, I see your hands up.
Louise, thank you so much. I know I said to you at the beginning, I want to learn what you learned so that I could tap into what's important, but you really have resonated. I took lots of notes about things that I need to connect to. So thank you so much for sharing your energy and your excitement. And definitely, I think I'm speaking on behalf of many of us that we are very much behind doing this with you. One of the things that saddens me the most is just hearing of so many people leaving our country when we just have so much richness that is being lost because people are just focusing our attention and energy on the things that are just negative. And I just think this would be such a wonderful opportunity to bring that sense of positive possibility and hope for our country, and inspire and encourage people to choose to stay because of the richness that we have. I really do believe that, God, Africa could be the most incredible country. We are, if we just, you know, really just tapped into what is good and what is right. And so really just know that I'm always with you and I'm there to support you. I'll be an usher if I have to, or I'll be whatever you choose me to pour the tea. I don't care. But one of the things that came up for me, and I'm not too sure, probably a conversation outside, but one of the things that you mentioned a few times was not calling it TED. And I'm kind of wondering, you know, you talk about bringing people together to partner people with possibilities. And I don't know whether Partners for Possibility as an extended license could be that brand, because I think that you have such a calling, you've got such an attraction, you've got such an incredible community of people around you that are with you, that want to be part of this future possibility for our country. So I don't know whether that's something that you've thought of, but I do believe that it's a brand that doesn't need to be recreated because it's already there. It just needs to be built on.
Yeah, so I think there's lots of opportunities. There's lots of opportunities, Sue, and we need to find out what the right one is. There's also the chance to kind of make more about Ubuntu, and we've all been kind of, how do we take the Ubuntu idea, you know, but so there's lots. I just feel that this is part of my next part of the journey is for us to get and you know, when we first started the conversation, we said maybe the first one will only be 20. I'm back to that. Maybe the first gathering is 20, and the 20 of us decide and we fall in love with each other and we're inspired and we go back with new energy, and the next time we'll each bring one, and then we'll be 40, and over 10 years we'll, you know, TED wasn't massive the first time, it was a small group. And so for me it's around, I just think we need to make that investment. It's an annual gathering and where we can support each other as leaders who are doing tough things to continue to go and do those tough things and be inspired by each other. That's my sense. Absolutely. But someone just sent me a note saying we should have a brainstorming conversation around next steps around that. So that will be the next thing. We will arrange a kind of, just the moment my diary opens up a little bit in May, we'll set up some time to do a brainstorming around that. Ashraf.
Okay. Yes, Louise, you can hear me, right? Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Can't see me, I know that, yeah. Just a couple of thoughts and maybe just 3-4 points that I'll put them all together. I may have missed some aspects already, okay? So one, in terms of the speakers to these TED Talks, right? You know, how does one become a speaker? Assuming, obviously, that one has to fit into those categories of TED that you've spoken about before, right? How does one become a speaker? Meaning, do you get invited, or historically, is there a lot of lobbying that takes place on behalf of organizations or interest groups that actually lobbies on behalf of a person? You know, you, for example, threw in the name Wayne Duvenage just now. So, for example, that's a form of lobbying for a person. So, what happens there? That's one. Secondly, you made the point already that it's very elitist because it's incredibly expensive, right? Does that sense of elitism then play out in terms of the narrative that is actually shared? Now, let me give you an example. The United Nations has got 5 permanent members of the Security Council. And like it or not, they ultimately determine what gets vetoed and what doesn't. So they effectively set the agenda for the whole world, right? So does something similar happen to this? That means who ultimately decides on the type of conversations and the narratives that are shared, and therefore that impacts on the others? And if so, is that elitist as well? I don't know, and therefore the question, right? The third one is this, that, I mean, we know that, you know, whether it's the TED Talks or the TEDx Talks, they become what, you know, the gold standard that people aspire to, right? So over the years, you know, have you actually done a study now in measuring the impact that these talks have had over the years in changing the societies or communities that they sought to change? Do they do that and measure that against what governments promise and try to do and change or do not change? Let me leave it at that for now. Yeah.
Okay. So let me answer that last question. So Ted Anderson personally has an enormous commitment to social impact. So just as an example, they do amazing things, these people, because they've got the power, they've got the money, they've got the clout. So they launched the Audacious program last year, 2 years ago, the last time that they were physically together, and raised $1 million from people in the TED community, mostly from the donors and patrons. And they launched this Audacious program, and they've been sponsoring people who are doing really interesting work around the world through this Audacious program. And it's almost, there used to be a TED Fellows program. Now this is the Audacious program, where they're taking massive big bets on big issues around the world, and they are pumping money and good people and support and all of that into those from a social image, so that TED can be seen to have social impact. I don't know whether they like myself, I would never try and track the impact of all my millions of talks, for example, because you don't know. You don't know whether there's one person in the room who's going to be inspired by that kind of. So I think they don't try to track that impact. But what they've done in terms of impact is they've kind of used the money and the resource and the clout that they've created, and they've launched projects. And then the impact from the talks and that's just kind of cherry on the cake. But they know that there's impact. There's no doubt that all of us at some point have been inspired by a TED Talk. We watched Sir Ken Robinson's TED Talk, or we watched Ben Zonder's TED Talk, or we watched a TED Talk, and it inspired us and it's changed us, and we've used it in our courses. And so yeah, that's my answer to that. How do you get chosen to talk? They've got a whole system. I don't think it's possible to lobby for someone. I think it's someone's whispers in someone else's ear. They see a TEDx talk. They have a conversation at Burning Man, and they say, "Oh, do you know this guy's doing this amazing work? And you know, his lab in Alston, and we should go and look at what he's doing." And they get tapped on their shoulders. I mean, the guy who does the work around the distribution of energy was saying he just got a call one day in his lab, and someone said, you know, would you be willing to come and talk at TED? So that's the second one. The third one around the elitist thing, that made me uncomfortable. I was very aware of the fact the whole time that the people in that room are mostly people with means, except the few audacious project guys. I never felt once that the narrative was, the people who go to TED are people who care about being a contribution beyond their day job. And so I had that experience the whole time, that people were genuinely worried about the earth. And they weren't worried enough about Africa. So I think we need to have more people there who can kind of make our case and get them interested about how we can kind of deal with our unemployment. When I told people around unemployment issues in Africa, they were horrified. When I told them about what's happening with Eskom in South Africa, they were horrified. So I think we need to have people out there and make the case and tell the stories, but we also need to tell the story about Africa as a contribution rather than a recipient, which is something I care deeply about. So I think if we had to do interesting kind of gatherings, we probably won't call them TED, but we'll do something else which is more, it irritates me no end. Let me just quickly do a quick thing that I have a bugbear about. Everywhere you go around South Africa now, someone has a Camino. And I keep thinking, couldn't we just have thought up a name that's a South African name for a walk in the bush? So I don't think we need to have a TED. We can have an Indaba or something else, an Ubuntu Indaba, and it's us gathering to be in a conversation that's kind of authentically African. So I hope there were many questions there, Ashraf. So I think it's nice to go to TED Vancouver, but we need to think about how do we take what they've done at TED and apply it and mobilize. Every single person who went to Vancouver last week left inspired and enthusiastic to go and be a fabulous leader in their place of work, and to go and make a contribution and to think broadly and expansively and big. My kids and my husband kept saying to me, what they feel that's happened to me is I've kind of expanded again from having been a bit constricted over the last while. And I am an expansive kind of person. I'm a 7 on the Enneagram. I need to do things like this for me. That might not be true for others. So I hope that answers the question, Ashraf.
Yeah, it certainly does. Thank you.
We'll continue to
Much
talk.
appreciated.
So we are at the end of this conversation. It's not the last conversation. The end of this conversation. I don't know whether anybody else want to say a closing word, something that you have to say before, in order to be complete with today. Or Emily.
One comment. I think, Louise, what you said about the women at TED, that they were so caring and sharing and celebrating each other. I think that's what we really need to learn. We need to learn to celebrate each other and be more generous with our appreciation and admiration, and not so, oh yeah, you're doing a good thing, but I know someone else who's doing the same. Let's just be bolder in our way to appreciate and celebrate each other.
Exactly, and women can lead the way on that. And women can, this is part of this Lisa Bragg's book, is around how do we get women to publicly affirm other women for what they're doing, because that is how we're going to create a better world. And if we start to keep putting the spotlight on the stuff that inspire us with generosity and abundance, yeah, the world will be a better place. Thanks, Emily. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for being part of this. Anita, the Gift Hub, they have a thing, a place, a kind of where they do drops of amazing gifts. So, for example, I've been having a really tough time with my microphone, but this is a gift that I got from the Gift Hub, which is this big, massive, beautiful microphone. I got some beautiful. Every time you walk past there were just gifts. I had to go and get an extra suitcase to bring all my gifts home, and some people got some gifts. So the Gift Hub was amazing. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for your participation, for being on the call. It was lovely to have you here. We will continue the conversation. Hopefully next time we're going to start to talk about when are we getting together around a campfire to have deep and meaningful conversations and to fall in love with each other. Have fun. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, Louise. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Thanks, Louise.